What is up, everyone? Welcome to Top 8 of the month of August. This is, hey, look, this is one of my favorite times of the year to stay at home. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, August is the dog days of summer. And for real, this is an opportunity to catch fish even in the dog days of summer. I feel like July was overly hot. August, the start was a little bit rainy in the south. You know, it's the transition. This is the biggest transition month of the season from them fish really leaving the offshore ledges and offshore places and starting to move shallow. Now, if we're talking about smallmouth up north, my friends, a little bit different story, and I have something for you later on in this video. But for the majority of my friends down south and in the Midwest, the majority of our bass they're out offshore during the months of May and June. July, they transition a little bit, and then August comes along, and it's really the major transition from summer to like going into fall. September is really that start of that. So really for me, this month is about utilizing and fishing for groups of fish that weren't targeting a lot of times during those hotter months, or those fish that were actually out offshore. There's fish that were always shallow, and that's when those groups of fish that were shallow start to play, and you get more bites up there shallower because they start to move in the backs of the creeks, they start moving on the flats. There's bite windows that unfold, and it is typically a tougher time of year to fish, but you can really catch some big bass in the month of August. It really does. It is fun. You got to grind, but you got to fish a lot of water and cover a lot of water and generate bites. And so there's a few baits that I have. This week we have a new lake that we're going to be breaking down in this video, and I've never fished this lake before. It's Lake Anna. So shout out to my friends that are out there around that Lake Anna area in Virginia. And so if you can see on sea maps right here, you can see it's a big lake with multiple tributaries. I've never been out there before, like I said, but we can sort of break down sort of like that, what that lake is going to look like and sort of the areas I'm going to be fishing on this body of water. So first bait of the month for me is definitely going to go into my roots of bass fishing, and that is going to be an accent buzzbait. This buzzbait right here is, in my opinion, the best buzzbait on the market. Obviously, it has my name on it, but I really seriously am not joking. It is premium, and a buzzbait overall. Got tomato. So we have people driving all over the back behind us and stuff. So a buzz bait for this time of year is phenomenal for covering a lot of water. And it really generates some big bites. There's fish that will be wolf packing in the month of August. There's fish that are going to be up there shallow around bluegill and shad on shallow cover, like lay down to the backs of the flats. It's a way to generate bites in 1 to 3 foot of water and cover a lot of water, and to catch those fish that are isolated. And typically the ones that bite a buzzbait in the month of August are the better than average fish. Topwater, to me, is this is really when it starts to kick off that topwater bite of the season. Now, I'm not saying you can't catch them in June and July and all that stuff, but to me, this is really when I'm going to lock in with topwaters starting from August here on out. And so a buzzbait is a bait that you can throw around wood, you can throw around grass, it's just such a versatile bait to generate and cover water and generate bites. It's easy to throw, you cast out there, you wind it in, but not all of them are created equal. Like I said, the one that I have right here is that accent buzzbait. And the reason behind this buzzbait, what makes it so good is this. Listen. That squeal. The key with this, more than anything, is that squealing. I want a really good sound to my buzzbait. You know what I'm saying? I want a really good sound on my buzzbait overall. And that is what it's all about. I like a bigger blade. There's like a finesse version and a little bit bigger blade, the regular blade version. And the regular to me is what I throw because it rises more and it makes more commotion. If you're looking for a more finesse, and I'm not talking about like a baby buzz, we're talking about like sort of like the medium-sized blade. That's when I would go with that finesse buzzbait. But as far as, you could throw the toad on this thing, but I actually, like right here, is I have like a little crawl on him, black and blue skirt with a black crawl. I had this one rigged up for the James River. I caught a few fish on him throughout. It depends on really what you're trying to imitate. So like I'll throw a toad when I'm trying to imitate bluegill. I'll throw a little bit smaller profile, like with a crawl, and a buzz bait when I'm really trying to imitate, just trying to get a little bit smaller profile. I think that they see a lot of toads out there, and if your lakes, what I mean by that is there's a lot of different toads in the market that you could throw on the back of a buzzbait, but it's become popular. Chris Baumgartner, Todd Auten down there in the Carolinas really started it off, threading a toad on their buzzbait so they could skip it. This is another deal where you're just putting a plastic back there, helps have those fish actually hold on to the buzzbait and really get the buzzbait and have something to hold on to. I don't like having my buzzbait just with a skirt. Just a skirt, I always put a plastic on it no matter what, depending on what you're really wanting to throw. That's all. It depends on, personal preference. But I always like something with 2 appendages. Smaller crawls work the best for me. And you don't want your appendages too long because you don't want your crawl actually coming back and wrapping around your hook. So that's good. As far as rod setup for this, 7.0 medium heavy is really a versatile rod. That's what I would recommend. 40-pound braid is what I like. You could throw monofilament, a little bit cheaper, but this is my sort of all-around topwater rod that I'll use a lot, really all-around rod, and I like a buzzbait with this rod and this setup right here. I do like a little bit faster gear ratio because that gear ratio really helps, when the fish blows up on it and he comes towards me, I have a lot more, to catch up to him, a lot more speed to catch up to him and set the hook and get that fish, especially with that braid as well. It makes it a little easier too. So buzzbait's definitely there. Where are we going to be throwing this buzzbait on Lake Anna, this lake we've never seen before? Well, first off, this place looks pretty dang cool. I've heard it's pretty good. Realistically, I really start to get to be, there's 2 major things that I feel like go down this time of year. They get in the backs of the creeks, like something like this back here, back of the creek, the back on the flat. They'll get around these flats, the last little deep water and some wood. Or they get in short pockets on the main lake. So like little short pockets like this. These areas right here, like in the mouth of the creek, maybe in the main lake, maybe the watercolor changes a little bit up the way a little bit more. Maybe this zone, seems like there's a good habitat like right around in here. So right around in this zone, there seems like there's a good little bit of habitat and sort of up midways up the lake. That's when I'll start to look for a good watercolor. Water's super clean. I'm not really I'm focused on a little bit more dinged in my water. So maybe not all in the backs of the creeks, but even on the main lake, I want shorter pockets. And then if I'm up the rivers, the very backs of the creeks, on the flats themselves, back of there, and then even actually up into the creek themselves. So I sort of it depends on what's going on, but that's when I'm going to throw the buzzbait. Now, other things like those docks and around rocky banks or back banks, the other thing is going up the river. Okay, let's just say up this main river right here. I'm assuming this is the main one that feeds it. Looks like it does. Going up the main river and hitting undercut banks, more clay and undercut banks, skipping that buzzbait around, reeling around those banks, undercut, laydowns. That's where I'll throw that buzzbait as well. So there's multiple different fish. There's the fish that are actually in the back of the creeks on the isolated wood, in the backs of the flats of the main creek arm pockets. There's fish that are on the channel banks where the sort of mud banks and the edges are and some of those little channel banks are. And then you have, of course, the fish that are still shallow in some of the shorter pockets. And that's what I'm going to be targeting with that buzzbait right there. Okay, so next up for bait number 2 is going to be a flipping bait. Goes hand in hand with a buzzbait. Of course, one that I like to throw a lot, you guys see me flip a lot on the channel, is that Crush City Bronco bug. I like something that imitates a bluegill and imitates a crawl this time of year. They do start to get on crawls pretty good as well. As they transition back shallow, the biggest focus for me is shallow cover and flat areas with wood. Sort of like July, but it transitions even more. The shad get up there. I do like a flipping bait. So same sort of scenario where I'm going to throw that buzzbait up the rivers and those undercut banks is the same place I'm going to throw this, or docks down the lake. I do want a little bit of stain, but docks down the lake, they get on the back sides of the docks, they still start to get on bluegill. And obviously this guy imitates a crawfish really, really well, but he also imitates a bluegill very well, is really well. So to me, it's sort of a combo, and that's when I like, of course, one of my favorite colors is green pumpkin blue because it sort of imitates a bluegill and a crawl. And 3/8 ounce weight is what I recommend this time of year. Because you do want, the one thing that you need to understand as well is a little bit faster fall. Even a half ounce could be good because you're trying to make them react. They've seen a lot of baits throughout the year, so I'll even pitch up a half ounce and try to make those fish react if the water's a little cleaner, because they've already seen several baits. So I want them I want it to get in there and shoo, eat it. You got to eat it now, or you just let it go by, right? That's sort of my mindset when I'm picking up a little bit heavier weight. That's just, really what I look for. Now, as far as rod reel line, 7.3 heavy, 17-pound line. If I'm light flipping, if I'm flipping really heavy cover, like up in like undercut banks and the trees themselves, way back in, maybe I'm at throw 20. High gear ratio reel, 8.3 to 1 is what I recommend. But that is sort of my setup for flipping, pitching around this time of year. As far as where I'm going to be focusing on, it's going to be definitely up the rivers with the flipping technique. Up the rivers, and I look on Lake Anna again, up these rivers on these undercut banks. Maybe it's like, and it's not necessarily like the rock channel banks. It's just like little undercut banks. It could be like a little small swing over here, back behind this bridge. Typically, I want flow. If there is a little bit of flow happening this time of year, if there is a little bit of rain, if there's any little bit of flow on the system, the fish are going to gravitate towards that like flies on cow manure. That's just how it's going to happen. And so that's what they really like to do, and they want to get around that flow because it's just the oxygen content gets so low. The oxygen levels get so low that really are starving for oxygen. That's why a lot of times they'll go so shallow, I feel like, because that's sometimes the best oxygen for the bass. So flow is really key if you have that on anybody who's watering your lakes. That's why the rivers typically start to play a little bit more. Some fish migrate up there. I don't know about on Lake Anna itself, but on a lot of other lakes, especially in the Tennessee River, the rivers start to play more as it goes on. Same sort of scenario, flipping those undercut banks. Now, if I'm down the lake and the buzzbait bite sort of tails off, I might utilize that time and flip the boat docks, flipping wood down the lake as well. But it just seems like the transition, like you can't, when you go up the rivers on a lot of these reservoirs, it's very specific. You're fishing a 100-yard stretch of bank. You're doing this. You're doing that. You're fishing these little corners. Where down the lake, like down on the lower end of this lake, I would assume, never been there, but I would assume that I have to cover a lot of water to generate some bites. So that's why, like, I'm not going to flip just down the bank, right? Because I can't cover, the fish are scattered out. I'm going to flip specific docks, maybe the docks that have brush on them, specific docks that look good to me, specific laydowns, but I'm just not going to go flipping down a ton. Now, of course, you flip down dock stretches themselves. It is a good time of year to flip down dock stretches, but try to pick the ones that are a little bit more specific, isolated ones out of the way, maybe the biggest dock in the area, the one that has the most boats on it, or the shallowest one, or the deepest. You just got to figure out what the fish are really on that given day. So those are really what I'm going to focus, the pitching technique. And people always talk about the pitching and flipping. Flipping is this. It's that deal right there. That's flipping. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about pitching around. So you're pitching around, pitching this bait, and so you always say, "Did you catch him flipping?" No, you didn't catch him flipping. Most people ain't caught a bass flipping their whole entire life. Listen, ain't happening. So that being said, Bronco Bug 4/0 VMC redline hook for sure. 3/8 to half ounce weight recommendation. You guys got it. You know where to go. That's number 2 for the month of August. All right, number 3. Dog days of summer. Look at that dog days of summer. Where we gonna go? We're gonna go the OG, baby. We're gonna go that OG. Oh my, yeah, it's got a stretch for him. Mr. 10-inch power worm, that is. The power worm. I mean, old monster, power worm, whatever you want. It really just depends on what you guys, personal preference is. But I got a big old giant power worm on right now. Actually, I haven't thrown this bait in a long time. And I rigged it up for a tournament. In July. Yeah, August. Hey, big worm catches big bass. As the sun comes up, you're going to have a bite window that happens in the morning. The bass get on the flats. There's grass areas. They get on the grass good. They get on like flats with isolated cover, stumps, brush, rock, all that stuff. They get that mid-depth stuff this time of year. So the bass that are in 20 feet, now they started to slide up into like 6 to 10 feet. in some of those zones. The ones that are on the bank are chasing bluegill, chasing craws, all that stuff. Those are the fish that I was really focusing on, the buzzbait and the bronco bug. Now you got the 10-inch worm. Okay, the 10-inch worm are the guys, for my draggers out there that want to generate bites. Don't sleep on a 10-inch worm in the month of August. This is my favorite time of year to drag a worm around. Just slimmer profile. The fish that are out there have been pressured a little bit more. And I know. A 10-inch worm's been slept on. It's been being slept on in the bass fishing world right now. Maybe not everywhere, but at the professional level, nobody talks about it. Guess what? This is the time to get back to throwing a 10-inch worm, dragging him around, especially for this time of year. But, so, as far as setup goes, I'm typically throwing 14 to 17 pound line. The big thing, dump truck. All right, so the big thing with that 10-inch worm overall is you got to pay attention when you set the hook, okay? What I mean by that is, okay, you all seen them old timers, they cast a worm out there. Back in the day, they used to go, buddy of mine, Woody, man, R.I.P. Woody, man. He's one of my dad's old buddies from back in the day at the club. It was Circle City Hookers was the name of the club in Indiana. He'd take a puff of that Marvel, drag that worm, drag him around. Yep. All right. Then you get, oh, there he is. There he is. Now, this is a scenario. Most of the time, you set the hook pretty quick. I set the hook pretty quick. But on 10-inch worm, that is the time when Woody was right. You let him have it, okay? Because what happens is a lot of times you mess up. Woody done taught me something back in the day, and I agree with him. When they go ahead and they bite him, okay? They're grabbing, dunk. You feel dunk, dunk, dunk. They got the whole thing now, all right? They ease off one. They ain't going to drop him. I mean, I don't think they're going to drop him. I don't want to worry about that. Eases off, easing off, easing off. Make sure you look at the direction where the fish is swimming. The worst thing you can do, okay, let's think. If they're swimming towards you, you hope they turn, because that's when you pop the mouth open, and you don't get a good hook set. And then you lose a lot of fish on a big worm. This is the reason why, because there's so much plastic. But if you do that, you reel down, you up all your tension on your line, you pull set, you make your whole rotation of your body, and you get that hook in that fish. That's the deal. And so one time I'm going to tell y'all, my dad always, man, he ain't got no hands. The fish ain't got no hands. He's got it, Woody. He's at the hook. But Woody wouldn't really gut hook him very often. He'd actually get him in the boat. So I learned something from old Wood Dog. But that right there is something that definitely I would take my time and let the fish actually have a little bit with the 10-inch worm. You will catch more fish and lose less fish because of that. Now, as far as, this is one thing on a big worm that I'm really adamant about. I really like a worm hook, but not just any worm hook. The key with a worm hook is you want to have bite in your hook point. Okay, from your hook point to your line tie. This is a VMC worm hook. This is the red line worm hook. It's a 5/0. Highly, out of all the things, listen, this hook right here, bad to the bone. Hooks them through the skull. Like, it just does not lose them. This is the best worm hook I personally believe I've ever thrown, period, in my career, bar none. And the reason behind it, like I said, is your line tie and your hook point. Number one, it's vanadium steel. It's TPFE coated. It's all the good stuff. It's super sharp, all that good stuff. But the key is your line tie and that point of that hook has more bite, which allows for a better hookup ratio on more plastic like a big worm. So that's my 2 cents on it. As far as rod, reel, line, 7:3 to 1 gear ratio is fine. 14 to 17 pound line, depending on where you're at. And then, of course, I throw a 7. This is 7.7. This is my Select Series rod. I like him a lot for that. He's a good all-around offshore rod, glide bait rod, just good, just mag draft, whatever you want to. It's really a good rod. And so that's what I use him for. I also will say this. If you are catching them pitching and flipping this time of year on a bronco bug or creature bait, and you go through a stretch, and you've been getting bit on, you don't get bit, or you're fishing a team tournament, you got a guy in the back of your boat, have the guy in the back of your boat pitch a 10-inch worm. There's something about a different profile that generates more bites, or generates bites that sometimes they won't want a creature bait, and I will pitch a 10-inch worm around or cast it around some of the same places I would pitch that bronco bug. So just something to think about, but make sure to be ready. Take your time, set that hook, and have a good time. Now, as far as where am I going to be looking for, what am I looking for? What am I be fishing with a 10-inch worm on these bodies of water? First thing I'm going to look for is, let's see here, let's go down the pond. I mean, I'm not saying, of course, up the wake on Lake Anna and the backstem pockets and the turns and stuff, for sure I'm going to be looking at that. But if I go down the pond a little bit, let's go more mid-lake, because this is sort of the kind of stuff. Definitely still, okay, let's look at this point right here. Okay, you got a point, it's 20 foot up on top. I'm going to say them schools of fish started to get, they were out here on this tip of this point. Now I'm going to think they're going to probably slide up on top of this stuff right here. Boom. 8 foot right there. Little brush right there, little stump row down here on this island. I'm going to drag around on that. Any little irregularity, rock rows on these flats, that's exactly where 6 to 10 foot of water is a great depth zone this time of year. And these fish will really start to get congregated up. And they're isolated, but they're still bass up there. It's not like schools. It's like broken up fish that are making their transition back shallow. And that's what I really will focus on, that 6 to 10 feet zone with that 10-inch worm dragging around. Now, if there's grass on your body of water, then that's where you're going to want to try to find the grass and drag it around, maybe 1/4 ounce weight, 3/8 ounce weight if you're fishing deeper. But that is really the main deal for me, is flats adjacent to the main lake, flatter points, places that these fish, little isolated pieces of cover, stumps, rock, wood, you guys got it. Drag it around, you can generate a lot of bites, or you can generate some big bites this time of year. So that is definitely one you got to have for the dog days of summer. Next up on the rotation is going to be for some of my smallmouth fishermen. Yeah, I'm going to talk about this real quick here. So since there is probably not many smallmouth in Lake Anna, but one thing that you want to definitely have is a drop shot for this time of year for my smallmouth fishermen that are heading up north to beat the hot days of summer, whether you're going to St. Clair, Lake Erie, the St. Lawrence River, where we're at right now. A drop shot catches big bass. We know that. It catches a big largemouth too. Listen, don't sleep on that. What the heck? I went to reel? Oh, I took that angle off. So, for me, this is the thing with this drop shot. I really like threading my hook on the bait. So threading that VMC size number 2 Nico hook, finesse Nico hook, on that BLT. If you're up on some of these bodies of water that have gobies or shad presence, I really like that goby color BLT. That's one of my favorites. It's just a good natural color, and it does have a good, just good overall color. As far as line goes, you could throw, I throw 8-pound braid. This is 8-pound revolve. It's new braid, sort of replacing the nano braid, but it's really good. I really like threading my baits. If it's TPE, I really like threading it, and I feel like I generate more bites because the plastic floats. It just stays up, and you're just way more efficient. You get more bass with less plastic. That's a win-win for the consumer out there. If you're a weekend angler or you're a serious tournament angler, either way, it's a win-win. You don't have to buy as many baits, and you catch the same number of fish a lot of times. And it typically does generate a few more bites for me. I mean, I just got off Lake Erie. That's how I caught a lot of my fish, and that bait's a battle elude. 7.0 medium action, fast action rod tip. I don't like a super light spinning rod. I think a lot of people get super caught up with fishing for smallmouth, like super light action rods and then super light line. Two things that I'm like, you don't necessarily have to have. So for me, I like that 7.0 medium. It's like a more medium plus-ish. And then you have, of course, having 10-pound fluorocarbon leader. If they're really fickle, I'll drop down in size of my leader line. But you break off more fish the lighter you go down, and you got to really pay attention to the leader size of your line if you're using braided line. So you got to be thinking about that a little bit. Okay, so 10-pound is what my recommendation is. If you don't want to have to manage it all the time. If you're big on the finesse game and you want to go down and drop down in size, and the area you're fishing has got a lot of pressure, go right ahead. I've asked a ton of smallmouth anglers. Actually, there's going to be a question this week. Does line size matter for smallmouth? I would say 75% of us Do not believe it does that much. Well, I'd say 50%, 50-50, 50-50. So we're split, but there's always bass that are biting, and I personally prefer that 10-pound leader unless I have to drop down. But we're gonna have a debate on that. We're gonna have a debate on that later on the week. Now, as far as I'll jump to a different lake for you guys, for the smallmouth, my smallmouth friends. I'll just go somewhere. I gotta get back. What the heck? For my smallmouth fishermen, here we go. Right here, we're looking at the mouth of Sandusky Bay, which has got a ton of sheephead. So don't necessarily take this and fish these spots in the mouth of Sandusky Bay because you might be reeling a ton of sheephead in, unless that's your thing. You can reel a ton of those in, have a good day, but probably bump up your line size to like 14 to 17 because they're big. For me, I'm really looking at these shoals. Okay, shoals like this guy right here. I want those little outcroppings, those little places like this, little edges, anywhere the rock. The big thing with smallmouth is irregularities. It's all about whether it's a bigger rock, smaller rock, edges. They're fairly predictable in what they like, which is really cool to see, but you got to fish around a lot to find them, if that makes sense. St. Clair is a different story. On Lake Erie, it's very driven by rock and cover. Same thing with Mille Lacs, same thing with a lot of the smallmouth lakes all over the country. They relate to the rock, and that's where they live at. And sometimes you can't even see them on your forward fishing sonar at all. So if you have it, cool. If you don't worry about it. Just utilize if you have side imaging, it's phenomenal to be able to see the rock, understand what's there. Look for breaks in the rock, look for gravel, rock transitions. Those are always great for smallmouth, and that's where a lot of times where they feed, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on. So that is what my gist on it. Fish the shoals, fish the places that have the deep water access to them, and in that place right there, maybe even like right here, like a little corner, right here you have a lot of contour that has a little bit lighter, has like the contours like open up a little bit right in this little corner right here. If there's some rock, zip, zip, zip. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for, and that's the stuff that I recommend. So there's a little tidbit for my smallmouth anglers. I didn't want to forget about you guys. I don't talk about them a lot because a lot of anglers don't get the opportunity to come up north. But if you are going up north, make sure you have those setups. You're going to generate a lot of bites. All right, so that's 4. We have 2 more left on the baits of the month here. First off, this is, I said it was a topwater month, okay? I said it's a topwater month, and I mean it. Frog fishing, okay? Frog fishing, this is a great month. I mean a great month to catch them on a frog. It's just, and it's a little bit depending on how you want to fish. Your frog is really depending on what's going on. So 2 different things. Okay, a frog, why do I pick a frog? Number 1, I can skip a frog around. So if you can't skip a frog, that's okay. Because that's one way I like to fish at this time of year. Fishing it in shade pockets, underhangs, under docks, all that stuff. Again, sort of like a buzzbait, I can cover it, but if they don't want that straight retrieve on a buzzbait, I can stop it, walk this bait, pop it. If there's a lot of grass, if there's any grass around, obviously a frog's great, but it's not limited to just grass. It is a very versatile bait that makes it a little bit easier to skip and generate some bites that not every angler that can make that, can make those casts. My buddy Kyle Welcher is probably one of the best at doing that. Obviously, Dean Rojas, the OG at this, really started this. I think it was on Lake Wiley, actually. He was up the river skipping around. I don't know if he started it like then. It was like earlier on where he caught him on I think it was a sumo frog, actually, sort of old school history. For my history of a bass fishing out there, he actually started with the old school sumo frog, and then he created a spro frog, and that's what he throws a lot now, of course. So that being said, I selected a popping style frog because I like to have more open water techniques. Majority of this is going to be open water frogging. This is why I really like throwing a frog in open water, and what I mean by that is it's not matted vegetation. Now, that being said, if there's grass and matted grass in your lakes and it cheeses out, and what it means by cheesing out, it basically makes a canopy, the mat gets, it matures, and it cheeses out. It has that green cheese, and it's like a thinner mat. Basically, you'll pull your bait across it, and it'll move, so bass can go through that. That's, of course, a great time of year to throw that frog as well. But not everybody has that. So for all my friends that do not have a lot of grass in their bodies of water, picking up a popping frog, rolling it roll casting undercut banks, casting under docks, casting over around trees, casting around willow weed if you have that around your lakes, covering water, and just being able to cover water around cover more efficiently than maybe a buzz bait and those willow weeds can be a good thing. I can keep it in place, and if I know a bass is there, I can sometimes walk them out with this. If I'm running the bank, throwing a buzz bait's great. Just covering rock banks and all that stuff, it's way more efficient, and I feel way better about that. But 1-2 punch, the frog is definitely one that I want to have on the on the deck, and it's just a bait that I have a lot of confidence in. So that's definitely one. 50-pound Suffolk 832 braid is what I really recommend. It's my favorite braid. And then a high ratio reel, 7.2 medium heavy if you're skipping undercut banks and up under stuff. But more of like, 7.2 medium heavy, but then 7.3 heavy to a 7.6 heavy if you're fishing heavier cover, and more thicker heavy cover, like from like pads and mats and stuff like that. I would bump it up a little bit more if I was doing that. So that's that right there. I'll talk a little bit about what I would really target. Sort of the same kind of stuff that we were talking about with the buzz bait, the same pockets, the little short pockets that I was talking about, some of these little shorter pockets that have backsides of docks. I can skip that a little bit better than a buzz bait, keep it in place. Of course, undercut banks, anywhere there's bushes and trees come into the water, anywhere there's grass, really more pocket related. Pocket related or backs of creeks that have grass is really where or up the rivers and those undercut banks. Same scenario where I'm throwing the flipping the Bronco bug, is the same kind of stuff up the rivers I'm going to be fishing with that frog. So that's what, back up that pond, back up this river, slide up here, current maybe right here. There's a bridge right there, maybe like right here before that, where that current would come out here if they were generating some, freshwater creek, maybe back up in here. That'd be good too. So that's what I recommend, but that's definitely one of my favorite ways to catch a bass. And a buzzbait and frog sort of work together for, depending on, I could have them both on the front deck, and depending on what I come across in my trolling motor, I cover a lot of water, I run in a lot of water, and if I see something, I'm going to pick up the frog. If I'm trying to cover water and run down the bank, more so I'm going to pick the buzzbait up and leave that alone and sort of do that. So that is last but not least. Okay, last but not least, for the baits of the month is a wacky worm. It's not flashy. She's not flashy, but she gets the job done. All right? We all know that. It's, of course, a wacky right here. This one's not out yet, but stick worms, a lot of great stick worms out there on the market. I love a green pumpkin magic color. And this is more so for those fish that are shallow, that are really like that you can visually see, or the backsides of the dock, the sun gets up, they don't want that top water, they're getting a little fickle. Those wolf packs, a wacky worm generates those bites. Or for my friends that are out there fishing shallower docks, if you're up north largemouth fishing, a wacky worm, you cannot beat a wacky worm on docks. You just can't. You just generate a lot of bites. It just does. Especially the shallower ones where you want that slower fall. Sometimes those fish will come out there and they'll look at it and come over and eat it. But don't sleep on a wacky worm. Overall, it's just a bait that gets bit this time of year, and it's one that I would highly recommend when you're talking about shallow water bassing. It's definitely is that 7.0 medium heavy, 10-pound fluorocarbon to a 10-pound braid, or an 8-pound braid right here. It's 8-pound nano. Nothing too crazy about the wacky worm. It's not, like I said, it's not flashy, but it gets the job done, and it sort of helps with the scenario. Almost if like I picked that, like if I had 3 rods on my deck for the lower end of Lake Anna, it's going to be that wacky worm, it's going to be a buzzbait, it's going to be a frog, right? So like, and maybe a bronco bug if I need to fish like pitch round. So those are going to be like my most, and maybe a 10-inch worm. So all these baits, but they're all for like on the lower. I'm like, all right. So I throw a buzzbait and a frog down the bank. Then I get to a backside of the dock, or I see a wolf pack. I pick up this wacky worm, skip it over to him, catch one on the wolf pack, or catch one on the backside of the boat dock. Then I'm like, all right, our fish misses my buzzbait. I pick that wacky worm up, skip it over there, doosh, eats it, sit the hook, catch that 4-pounder. Then I roll around the corner, and I'm like, oh man, there's a brush pile right here and 8 foot of water. I pick that 10-inch worm out there, I fire it out there, I drag it, I hop it over the brush pile, dunk, dunk, set the hook, catch that one. I mean, yeah, I'm gonna throw all those. Maybe the only thing I'm not gonna do is a smallmouth technique on it. Probably the smallmouth rig. That's it. I mean, that's the reason why I picked that, is exactly that scenario right there. Those are the rods that I would have on the deck of my boat if I was dropping in tomorrow on the majority of bass lakes in the South to Midwest. Does not matter. That's what I got on my deck this month, and hopefully, if you let me know. I know you all probably say I missed one or but I want to hear your favorite bait. Drop me a comment if you're still here. Drop me a comment below. Let me know your favorite bait for the month of August. Period. End of story. I just like to hear it. Maybe a tiny torpedo, maybe a skitter pop. I mean, I want to hear it. Maybe it might be something crazy. There's sometimes I'll hear some things and I'm like, that was a good one. I didn't think about that one. So, always love to hear from the subscribers and all the viewers out there. Really appreciate you all so much. We got some work to do. We're here at St. Lawrence. We're getting ready to head out there on St. Lawrence tomorrow, and man, we got a lot on the line. Angler of the Year. We got obviously this tournament. A lot of things all comes to a head this week. So, appreciate you all so much for following along, and we will see you on the next one.